Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to play some games with Lost Zone Cofagrigus EX. This is a deck that I built quite a while ago and just never really tried. And with the new Dragapult EX coming out, it made me think about this card. The Dragapult EX is a Stage 2 EX with 320 hit points, and for one colorless it does 70 damage, but for fire psychic it does 200, and you get to spread 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. Stage 1 that it evolves from has an ability that says, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one in your hand, and put the other on the bottom of your deck. Now I'm not sure what the best way to build Dragapult EX is yet, but for Cofagrigus I went with a Lost Zone engine with a 2/2 Cofagrigus and an Iron Valiant. It just kind of focuses on the Iron Valiant for the big damage attacks. You got Sableye to spread damage to set up for Cofagrigus, or set up Cofagrigus damage with Sableye. Because Cofagrigus says for 2 psychic, 110, and place 5 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. And then it has an ability that when it gets knocked out, you get to search your deck for any one card. So that's pretty cool in a Lost Box deck. Like if they Roxanne you or whatever, late game you can, and they knock out your Cofagrigus, you can grab a Colress or just whatever card you need to win the game. And some cards to think about adding into this deck if you ever want to try it is a TM Devo or a TM Crisis Punch. The Devo is definitely a card that could have came in handy. Crisis Punch is always good with Cramorant, and especially when you're running 2. And I flip-flopped Iron Valiant for Cramorant. I think one of the games I might have played with the 2 Iron Valiant, but I decided to end up going with 1, and just getting the early Cram attacks seemed more important. This is definitely not the most competitive deck, but it is pretty fun. Alright, so this first game, I won the coin flip and chose to go second. And we are up against Charizard. Alright, took a second. The game's really laggy. This is not a very good matchup for this deck. But right here, I'm like, oh cool, I get to maybe just win the game right now. That's pretty cool. I was thinking I pretty much have everything I could need in hand to just win the game, except Cramorant's prize. So I just end up checking prizes. I had to skip a little bit there because the game kind of froze, but we're just going to Colress here, and I'm definitely going to take the Colress for next turn, and I'm debating between Counter Catcher and Super Rod. But since we go behind a lot in this matchup, I'm going to take the Counter Catcher. There's a couple other Super Rod, and a lot of the attackers are pretty low energy attackers, so I shouldn't be hurting for energy too bad. And this is kind of hard because it always feels bad getting rid of energy right away. Because like you're gonna definitely find yourself in a situation later where you have to get rid of one, so getting rid of one early always sucks. But I wanted to keep getting cards in the Lost Zone, and I kind of had the hopes if I hit the perfect cards I might have been able to get off Radiant Greninja, but then I realized no, there's no cards that can make me do that. So I give up the hopes of the donk and pass. But now that they were able to use their boxed order, they get out their Pokemon, and they're playing the Generations energy. This is a Mana Culture that I'm up against. And I don't know if they prized Manaphy this game or what the deal is, but they just... I'm assuming they're going to get out Manaphy here, but they get out a second Pidgeot instead. Which they definitely... Or Pidgeotto? Pidgey. Why could I not think of the name? They get out a second Pidgey instead, which is interesting, but no Manaphy means we're like in a pretty commanding spot, because if they were able to put down a Manaphy and then evolve up all their Charizards and Pidgeots, it'd be really hard for me to win this game. This deck doesn't necessarily have the biggest damage output, so you're kind of relying on knocking out little guys, and this is also a not meta deck. They're playing a meta deck, just with a little bit different of a build. And that full art Cofagrigus looks so cool. I'm just trying to get to 7 to see if I can get the Greninja off. And I can Artazon here for Sableye, just thin my deck out a little bit, but I mostly just wanted to see what was in my deck. I have 7 in the Lost Zone, but I have no way to get enough on a Greninja to attack with it, so I have to attack with Cofagrigus so that I can retreat my Comfey. There's no way that I could get 2 waters and Psychic on my Greninja and something on my active to retreat. But I am still able to take 2 prizes. If Cofagrigus wasn't weak to Dark here, I would only take 1 prize, but I'm getting knocked out no matter what, so it really doesn't matter. I figured I'd just knock out the Pidgey before it gets more HP, and then I can try and maybe knock out the Pidgeot at some point. But they super odd more little guys back in, and if they bench, yeah, they bench another Charmander, and that makes this game like from pretty much like not winnable to winnable, is them benching more small HP Pokemon. They definitely shouldn't have done that. That's one of the like best parts about Lost Box. Sometimes people just can't resist leaving their board alone if they have an opportunity to put more Pokemon in play. They're just going to put them in play. And you can end up taking advantage of that with Sableye and winning games that you really shouldn't have. Because at this point, they just should have tried to evolve up their second Charmander and left so that it was a Charizard on the bench, a Pidgeot on the bench, and a Charizard in the active, and that would have been more than enough for them to win the game. But they're putting more little Pokemon in play. So now I can just Greninja and take 2 prizes, and then I only have to knock out 1 Charizard to win the game, or a Pidgeot. But we search for Mirage Gate off of the Cofagrigus ability, because that gives me the guaranteed Greninja attack. That ability is really cool in Lost Box decks. If the attack did like a little more damage, or at least enough to 2-shot everything, it maybe would be a viable card. It's a shame because the card's really cool. And I was thinking about vacuuming the Artazon out of play, but there's really no point. Like, I welcome them to put more Pokemon in play, I guess. If they put 2 more in play, I can just win with another Greninja or a Sableye. And I'm explaining the ability here that I kind of forgot that it had an ability. I just wanted to use the attack because it reminds me of Dragapult VMAX and Dragapult EX coming out. I don't know. It's a cool attack, and placing damage counters is always a fun thing to do. They bench another Charmander, and I'm thinking here they're going to vacuum away their Defiance Band and put the Hero's Cape on their Charizard. But they don't. They put the Hero's Cape on the benched one. I guess that kind of makes sense. But luckily I saved the vacuum, and I have perfect vacuum targets in hand. So now I have double Sableye, and I can bench Cram and just hope to go like Sableye, Cram to win the game. It's kind of cutting it close, but it's definitely enough to win. Flower selecting, grab a Colress for next turn. Now I can just switch into my Sableye, and I wish it would let you look at the Lost Zone when you're in the middle of a switch. So I realized, oh, I never even checked. I have no idea how many cards are in the Lost Zone. I was pretty sure it was more than 10 though. But one of the things I wanted to do was, which is why I didn't play the Mirage Gate, is because I wanted to Iron Valiant the active Charizard. So I could Iron Valiant ping it for 20 and then attack it for 200, and that would be enough to knock it out. But they're going to switch to the bench, so that kind of takes that play away, and they just Burning Darkness. Luckily, they don't disrupt my hand. I was going to send up Cram. That's definitely not correct. Yeah, Sableye. I kind of thought Counter Catcher was active for a second, and I just saved these 3 cards because they're better than the other 2. I don't really need them particularly. Artazon, take a look through the deck. There's no energy, so I cannot play like Mirage Gate to set up retreats or anything. And I'm just hoping that I get to keep my hand here, because I have Counter Catcher and they'll go down to 1 prize this turn. I can just go Counter Catcher Cram. I was debating putting the other couple damage counters somewhere else, but there's really nowhere else where it's relevant at all. And they do Iona me, but I get a skateboard, so that's nice. And I have to be really close to boss because there is a boss order in deck. So it should be like pretty close to the top because they just put 5 or 6 cards back. And I flower selecting, I hit the boss, so I'm able to just knock out the Charizard, and probably win a game that I had no right winning just because they kept benching more Pokemon. Alright, so this game we lost the coin flip and they chose to go second, and we see the mulligan, and I'm just assuming that it's Gardy. I'm kind of hoping it's Gardy because that should be like a pretty decent matchup because they have so many small HP guys, but they get super lucky and start Klefki. That sucks. You really never want to see that as a Lost Box player because you can't use Comfey, you can't use Greninja. Fluttermane is one thing, but Klefki is just another level of bad. And I attached the Sableye and I'm just forced to pass. Well, hopefully next turn we'll hit a Colress off of this Pokégear. We get Ionoed anyway. I don't know, it's debatable if I should have attached the Rescue Board to the bench Comfey, but I didn't, so we're here now. And I get to use my Artazon, which is the unfortunate part about playing the stadium, but I guess the price you pay. I got Comfey off it. They get their Fluttermane, which is also not what we like to see with a Lost Zone deck. This is kind of awkward, but I just get rid of the Cramorant because I can't attack with it into Klefki or Fluttermane anyway. And I already have my 2 Cofagrigus basics, which is pretty decent. Like, that's kind of who I want to attack with in this matchup. And I'm debating if I even want an Artazon. There's not really much I want to put down, and I also didn't want to shuffle my deck because the cards that they put on the bottom are just not the cards I wanted. I want to get to a Psychic Energy. But I just hit them for 20. It sets up the math for Cofagrigus to knock out the active and also knock out the Klefki on the bench. I Colress and I whiff the Psychic, but I have Mirage Gate in my hand, so that should be fine. I think I can get to 7 this turn. I can either get to 6 or 7. No, I can only get to 6. That's terribly unfortunate. And I'm just looking at my attack options, trying to figure out if there's anything I can do. There's not really much to do, and I end up using Artazon. I was kind of like torn on if there was a Psychic Energy in my hand before I got Ionoed. I don't think there was, but there definitely could have been. And I just have to scratch for 20 again. There's really nothing better that I can do. And we'll see what they do this turn. I'm assuming they're going to get a Fluttermane attack off. But as soon as I get my Cofagrigus rolling, that'll be pretty good. And they Turo up their Fluttermane and go into Drifloon and make it worth 2 prizes. I don't know what my opponent was thinking here, but I guess these are the kind of fun games you get to play on the casual ladder. They're probably just learning the deck, like nothing against them or whatever. Just, you know, sometimes you do weird things when you first start playing a new deck. You're not sure the lines and stuff, but that definitely wasn't it. They possibly also didn't have enough energy to attack with the Fluttermane. I'm not sure, but they probably would have been better off just leaving the Fluttermane in the active and not benching the Drifloon and just passing over this play, because this lets me just basically do whatever I want. And I put energy onto my Iron Valiant just to get it kind of prepared to have a backup attacker ready, because I don't know how many times I'm going to get Ionoed. And I'm also debating hard retreating here. I don't know if I want to leave it set up to attack, hard retreat. There's a lot of options. But I just end up switch carding because I have only used 2 or 3 switches throughout this game because they just had me ability locked with the Klefki in the active the whole time. These Dondozo sleeves are also really cool. They just added them into the sleeve and deck box store. I like them a lot. And I was able to set up the Manaphy and the Kirlia to be knocked out with Cofagrigus' damage. I decided to do that over knocking out the Klefki just because I think it's more valuable to knock out the Kirlias. And if it didn't have the cape on it, it also would have been nice to not take 2 prizes and not give them access to counter catcher and stuff like that, but I don't know, there's not really much they can do with Klefki in the active, and they definitely don't want to keep it in the active because, well, they wouldn't be able to keep it in the active and take a knockout, but it shuts off their own Manaphy, and then I could Greninja. They're just going to hit into my Iron Valiant for 190. I'm not really sure what They probably should have just hit into my Cofagrigus for 190. That would have been a much better play. But now I have Boss in hand, so I can knock out either Drifloon or Ralts and the bench Curlia, which is pretty good. And I'm just debating on Mirage Gating or not. And I decided to throw it on the Yamask. I should have just held on to the Mirage Gate. That was definitely a mistake. And I've been attached to the Comfey. It's always nice to have energy on your Comfey or free retreat. I have noticed though, whenever you put the energy on it, you draw the rescue board, so then you don't get to use the rescue board. So I'm not sure if that's really correct anymore. I know it used to always be correct to just put the energy on the Comfey. But I should have held on to the Mirage Gate because all that I needed was Sableye and a Psychic Energy, assuming they didn't disrupt my hand. So that was a mistake. And now they have a huge gardevoir built up, and I can basically just attack with Cofagrigus. And this is a really smart play by them too, because they're able to either just knock me out with Gardy, which still has like a ton of HP, like 260 more HP, or they could knock me out with the Flutter Mane and not let me use my ability to grab any one card, which I would really like to be able to use. But they're attaching to the Flutter Mane, so it seems like that is their plan. But all I need is a Sableye or a Psychic Energy, or a Psychic Energy and a Cofagrigus, but if I just got Psychic, I'd just attack with Iron Valiant. And they bench Jirachi, so that takes the Sableye out of the picture. And at this point, they're probably hoping that I brick, and they're going to take 3 more prizes next turn with the Flutter Mane. This is definitely like the correct line of play. I, of course, already have game. I just don't see it because I'm an idiot and I'm not paying attention. I was like so tunnel visioned on knocking out the benched Manaphy for game for some reason. So hopefully that person doesn't think I was like BMing, just waiting a super long time to play out my hand when I had win in hand already. But yeah, just tunnel vision on the Manaphy. And that was Cofagrigus. Can't wait for the Dragapult EX to come out. I'm really hoping it's a good deck. I think these type of attacks are really fun, and also it has the stage 1 has a good ability. But take care. Hope you enjoyed.